Welcome back to Educator.com and our final pattern of organization, the somewhat abstract and not always easy to understand cause and effect. So in this lesson, we're going to go over, again, the 4 ways to think about causes. And then I'm going to go over what the term factor means, what writers mean when they talk about the several factors in some phenomena or something you see. Then we're going to go over something very simple and learn what a process is, and then I'll just give you 2 examples. This is a cabin. Now, why am I putting a cabin on this picture? Well, I'll tell you. The cabin is the effect. Why is a cabin the effect? Well, turns out absolutely anything you can think of, anything you can touch, anything you can feel, could be thought of as a cause. As an effect. This is an effect. Now, there are 4 causes that made this effect of this nice little cabin up in the woods somewhere. The first way to think about the cause is that there was an idea that caused this cabin. So somebody thought about, well, we need some plans, we need some blueprints, and we need a kind of an outline for the cabin. And we're going to plan it out and structure it before we start building it. Now, of course, blueprints don't just magically become a cabin. You had to get some material to make the cabin. So let's get some stone. Let's get some brick. Let's get some brass pipes. Let's get some lumber and some roofing. And, let's get some, something for the bathroom, some tile, whatever it is we need. We need all that stuff. Now, once you got your stuff, you don't just truck it to the location and then walk away and expect it to turn into a cabin overnight. There's a third type of cause, and that's called the efficient cause. The efficient cause is the actual organizing of material into whatever it's going to become. So, in this case, the efficient cause of the cabin is workers pounding in nails, maybe somebody digging a trench. You can just imagine a whole bunch of construction workers getting all together to build that cabin. And the final cause is actually sometimes called the final cause, but we'll call it the purpose cause in this case. And so what we want to ask is, well, why build this cabin at all? I mean, why bother? Well, you'd answer that question as, well, it's a nice place to live, it'll be a nice place to go on vacation, it's cozy, I just want to get away for the while. Whatever it is that would inspire somebody to build a cabin. That's what the purpose cause is. So, we have 4 causes. Here's how we think about them. The idea is a what question. The material is also a what question. Efficient is always how did the material become the effect. The purpose is, well, why bother at all? Here's another effect. This painting is called Victory Leading the People, and it was painted in sometime during the 19th century. And we can look at it. We got, a French woman holding a French flag. We have, a little kid with 2 pistols. We have a bunch of, definitely not the wealthy of France fighting for it. So what's going on here? Well, it's a wonderful painting. And let's discuss this painting as the effect in relation to those 4 causes I just talked about. So, again, what was the idea for this painting? What is this painting made out of? How was Victory Leading the People made into a painting? And why bother, with this whole painting with a French flag and, some, poor people with guns? I'm not sure how much I like that. Let's find out why. Well, at one point the painter thought, I'd like to make a symbol for victory. And since that symbol for victory definitely has to be holding a French flag. There's no other flag that's going to work because I'm painting for France. What are the materials? We got oils, we got colored paints, and of course we have the canvas that the painting was actually, painted on. Efficient. Well, we got the painter carefully paints away, sketches it out, draws it, lets it dry, probably works hours and hours and hours, maybe years. I'm not sure how long that painting took. You get the idea. What's the purpose? Why make this painting? Well, we're going to commemorate some of those great events during the French Revolution. As a side note, that little kid holding those two pistols was alleged to be the inspiration for Les Miserables. Now, so far I've talked about four causes, but the two examples I've given you are effects that are made by people. So, when we're talking about effects that are in the natural world, that again can be anything, we're not going to talk about ideas and we're not going to talk about purpose. Not usually. Definitely not in a writing class or reading class, and probably not for most of education. But we are going to still talk about the material. What is this stuff made out of? And efficient, how did this stuff become what it is? So the easiest example is, well, a tree. Think about a tree. Look outside your window. You don't have a window, Google it on the image. Okay, and ask yourself, well, what is that tree made out of? Funny thing, trees are actually made out of mostly air, but I'll let you research that and find out why. Efficient, well, how did this air become a tree? So, you notice I'm not asking about the idea of a tree. I'm not talking about, well, did somebody think about a tree first and think about how nice it would have to be green leaves or pine needles or, maybe palm trees? And I'm not talking about a purpose for the tree. Although you could definitely think of a lot of reasons why trees are great, we don't normally talk about purpose when we're talking about things in the natural world. So, those are the four causes, and we got causes that are natural and causes that are made by humans, or as it's sometimes called, artificial. Continuing on, we need to figure out what this crazy term factor is. A lot of times when students are reading an essay that has a lot of cause and effect keywords in it, they run into the word factor and they're not sure what it means. Sometimes they think factor as in, factoring, as in, something that has to do with math. Not necessarily what's going on here. So let's talk about some simple cause and effects here, and then we'll figure out what factor means. What caused the broken glass in the window? Well, one cause. A ball flew through the window. What caused the forest fire? One cause, a bolt of lightning. What caused the water to boil? Well, there was a fire beneath it, and it eventually got really, really hot. But what about some more complex causes, some more complex things that we can, think about, we can imagine, we can see? Here are some very complex effects that will correspond to many causes. How about urban crime? Then you can just Google it and, kind of think about, in your history books, think about something like the LA riots. Well, that was a lot of urban crime, and it was definitely had more than just one cause. How about the stock market crash in 1929? Well, if you guys Google that or your Wikipedia that was a stock market crash that caused the Great Depression. So what were the causes of this particular effect here? Why did the stock market crash in 1929? More recently, maybe you're thinking about a lot of the anti-war movement in the Bush years. Why was that happening? What was the big deal about that? What caused that to happen? It wasn't just George W. Bush. There were other reasons why people were opposing the war during the Bush years. And we could even go back to our wonderful painting of Victory Leading the People and think, man, what caused the French Revolution? So now we're going to get to a definition of a factor. You can think of a factor like it's an ingredient in a cake. And each one of these factors is one single cause. And then finally, all these causes have to work together to eventually produce the effect. Or in this case, it's the cake. So, what are the factors in making a cake? Well, sugar, flour, chocolate, eggs, maybe some frosting. You put all those factors together, you have the effect of a cake. And things like urban crime, any kind of social issues, often many scientific issues, there are many causes for a single effect, and we're going to call that a factor. Now, process. And I promised that this is going to be easy to understand. A process is a way of organizing an essay that very simply explains how something is done. or it describes steps towards a single result or an effect. The easiest way to think about this when you're reading your essays and you're reading patterns of organization is think about cause and effect mixed together with chronological organization. You will have process organization. Finally, one thing you can think of is that first cause makes an effect, and then this effect is because of a second cause, and then there's a second effect, and so on and so on. There's a chain of cause and effect that happens. Now, finally, we're going to get to some sample essays. The recurring causes of urban crime are rather well known. First, urban crime is a result of gentrification. Well, what does gentrification mean? Gentrification means the very wealthy purchase property, while the very poor eventually become concentrated in smaller spaces. This leads to another factor, a lack of social mobility. People who live in dense urban areas often do not have either the money nor the knowledge to leave such areas. An additional factor is racism. This is illustrated by the famous LA riots of the early 1990s. So, I have several causes here, and just by noting that, you can read the rest of this essay and know that, well, there's probably going to be several factors for a single effect. What's our effect this time? There it is, right there, urban crime. So let's put C over some of the factors, since we know factors are causes. First, urban crime is a result of gentrification. I'm going to put C over that because I know that's one cause. Notice, result of indicates a cause. Gentrification means etc., etc. This leads to another factor. What is this other factor? I'm going to put C over it so that I know it's a cause. A lack of social mobility. C. C is my cause here. People who live in dense urban areas often do not have the money or knowledge to leave such areas. An additional factor, and this is the very last one, is racism. And I'm going to put that over as C is another cause. And then we have one example here, minor supporting detail in the famous LA riots of the early 1990s. Now, maybe this one looks familiar to you because this was in the writing lecture, but let's go ahead and go over this one because it's a process essay. Killing tiny mosquitoes causes the death of rare birds. It has to do with a process of tiny amounts of poison, DTT, getting into the food chain. First, let's start with plants. If we spray DTT on plants, the amount is harmless. However, small animals like mice eat the plants. This causes a slightly larger amount of DTT to build up in the mice. In the next phase, snakes begin to eat the mice. The DTT doesn't go away, but gets inside the snake. The amount of DTT grows. Finally, an unsuspecting predatory bird eats the snakes. After a while, the result is a sick and dying bird. This one's going to be a little bit harder because there's not just one cause and effect, but there's several causes and effect. So let's go ahead and see if we can find them. Okay, so first off, we have killing tiny mosquitoes causes the death of rare birds. This is kind of our topic or a thesis. And I'm actually going to write this out in kind of a very brief way for you. I'm going to write the killing of mosquitoes, M, causes the death of rare birds. And I'll put a little symbol here for not, and I'll put a symbol here for birds. You can use this in your own note-taking anytime. This arrow just means this causes that. This squiggly line just means not something. If you don't like the letters M and B, you don't have to use them. You can draw pictures, you can use symbols. I'm just showing you a very simple notation that might help you out. So, killing tiny mosquitoes causes the death of rare birds. So I'll just go ahead and put that here. It has to do with the process of tiny amounts of poison, DTT, getting into the food chain. So I'm going to pay attention to when DTT keeps coming up because this poison was defined for me early on. First, let's start with plants. If you spray DTT on plants, the amount is harmless. Well, there's no cause or effect there, but let's keep listening. However, small animals like mice eat the plants. This causes an amount of DTT to build up in the mice. So let's go ahead and say that's a cause. DTT is built up in the mice. There's one cause and an effect. In the next phase, snakes begin to eat the mice. Okay, so what's the cause and effect that's going to happen here? The DTT doesn't go away, but gets inside the snake. Okay, so here's another cause and effect that's happening. The amount of DTT grows. Could even just put that there as a single effect. Finally, an unsuspecting predatory bird eats the snake. After a while, the result is a sick and dying bird. That's an effect. And then what was the cause of that effect? Well, the predatory bird eating the snake. So you can see in this essay, what's happening is that one thing causes this effect, and then this new effect causes the next thing that happens in the chain of cause and effect. So this isn't like factors where I have one cause, two cause, three cause for one effect. What I have is one cause causes an effect, the effect causes the next thing, and so on and so forth. So let's go over some quick keywords. If you got process keywords, remember anything that's a chronological keyword will also be a process keyword. However, you're probably not going to hear things like dates or times or exact moments. You might hear something like first, second, and third, or you might hear something like before, next, and after. Very important for process transitions is start and finish and begin and end. Another important one that's almost always a process transition is step and phase. For cause and effect keywords, we have words like factor, because, and cause, formed, made, changed, the reason is, and if this, then that. If we spray a lot of DTT, then a lot of birds will die. So, you're going to read your very last essays for this part of the course, and go ahead and read it and annotate. Make sure that you skim first and scan second. And then there's a series of short answer questions for you. Until then, thanks for using Educator.